Keith's funeral was a triumph of sorts. Hard to believe it was 3 months ago now. In some respects it seems to be a long time ago, and in others only yesterday. It was important to me that I had the opportunity to grieve him how he would have wanted me to grieve him. You know. We never really spoke about death, about how we might want our funerals to be. I had the sense that he would go before me. It's the correct way around. It was always just a question of when. I never anticipated it would have been in the middle of a month, though. I don't know why, but it just seems a bit untidy for Keith. He wouldn't have coped if I went first. No. Would no doubt have ended up like poor old Mr. Kershaw. I didn't know if he wanted a burial or a cremation, what he might want to wear, who he'd want as pallbearers, hymns, music, poetry. It was all undiscussed, undisclosed before his untimely demise. Which, to be frank, was ideal for me, as it gave me a blank canvas and free rein to do what I believed was right. And I'm always right. Keith was a huge Hark Rangers fan, so I had him dressed in their latest shirt, paired with his synchronized aqua salsa budgie smugglers with Olay frills and matching swimming cap. I also threw in his Safe Travels utility belt. I mean, I didn't want all this stuff. So, filling the coffin was a great opportunity to have a good clear out of the sentimental, less valuable artefacts. You know. He wasn't a man of stature, so storage-wise, the coffin was quite roomy. It's what he would have wanted, to be surrounded by a mass of his own beloved belongings. Reverend Fiddlemore conducted the service. I had him over for tea a couple of days after Keith's death. He was a great comfort, although not my first choice on account of the horrifically distracting stammer that he has. However, Reverend What's-Her-Face was unavailable. In addition to the irritating stammer, Reverend Fiddlemore can also be a little bit too gaudy for me. But I needed to get this all over and done with, you know, to process the grief. Reverend What's-Her-Face tends to slip God in around the back. Fiddlemore, however, thrusts God in your face the moment you step in the chapel. It's most inappropriate when people are mourning to be reminded of Jesus dying on the cross. Just because my Keith died in the comfort of our denim blue Mercedes-Benz SLK with tinted privacy windows and voice-controlled ambient interior lighting doesn't mean that he suffered any less due to not being subjected to the barbaric conditions of a public crucifixion. At least Jesus got a second wind, a chance denied to any of us mere mortals. For the service, I adopted a simple approach. Keith hated hymns, so I kept them to a minimum and went with 3. One more step along the world I go. This seemed appropriate with the themes of travel and Keith meeting his maker in the Mercedes-Benz. Then, Give Me Joy in My Heart, which I took as a solo number. Only, instead of singing, Sing Hosanna to the King of Kings, I tweaked to Keith of Keiths. A little tribute from me, you see. And finally, Cauliflower's Fluffy, which takes no explaining, really. I felt quite nervous of doing a solo, if truth be told. I know, You wouldn't think it to be true, but it is. Reverend Fiddlemore wasn't keen on the idea and said, "You are grieving, dear child. I think that a solo number at your husband's funeral may take its toll on you, and I'm insisting that you reconsider." He was correct in the fact that it was a huge undertaking on my part, and I was nervous in the lead-up to taking the stage, but I'm so glad I did it. The audience were in tears as I belted out my tribute to Keith. I even heard someone mutter, "I can't take this, it's too much." To think that I could have an impact on another person in such a way is as moving to me as it evidently was to them. Reconsider. For the performance, I wore a simple but elegant black outfit with veil. I arrived in a long black limousine, a Lincoln, had to go around the block a few times to let the crowd build before I got out. Plus, the limousine was booked by the hour and included a bottle of champagne, which I didn't wish to waste it. I'll be honest, I felt a little bit squiffy by the time I arrived at the crematorium chapel. Helped to douse the nerves before my big debut, though. One of Keith's former colleagues, Roger Less, paid his respects in a eulogy about the time they worked together. All 5 decades of it. He certainly had me looking the dutiful widow, people passing me Kleenex and bits of loo roll left, right, and centre as the tears rolled down my face. Yawning will do that to you. Christ, he was boring. You'd expect an amputee to have a bit more about them, spread some hope and inspiration, but no. Not Roger. It could have been Keith up there, boring the life out of everyone. On reflection, I should have amended the running order of the programme so that my solo came after Roger. Perk everyone up a bit, you know. Keith's sister was playing Candy Crush by this stage. I was actually surprised that Roger was up for it, though, considering that Keith was to blame for the accident that caused him to lose his penis in the first place. They'd known each other since school, grew up on the same street. A lot like me and Sylvia, really. She came along to support, Sylvia. She does enjoy live performances. She said she wouldn't have missed it for the world. She's very supportive like that. I did think about offering her a lift in the Lincoln limousine, but I wasn't keen on sharing it. Mind you, Sylv loves her Vespa, so she was more than happy to arrive on that, even if it was unsightly, propped up against the entrance of the crematorium. Mother was her usual self, making it all about her, as you'd expect. Crying out for Keith, "My boy, my only son." Ugh. I think she forgets sometimes that I'm her daughter. Her only offspring, her blood. She always idolised Keith. I don't think she actually liked him. I'm not actually sure she likes anyone. But she knew that adoring him would get to me, and she'd use that as a lever to control me. I'm certain of it. I couldn't have had her in the black limousine with me. Which is why I stuck her in the hearse with Keith. Here's hoping she takes the hint. After the service, we went to Lavuccio's. Oh, yes. No expense spared. The catering was sublime. Head chef Carlo Mario Galizio really surpassed himself. Nothing less than I'd expect from a not one but 2 Michelin-starred chef. Keith's sister, she got a little bit leery throughout the wake, filling her face with fancy funeral food and then started on shots of sherry. She went downhill fast. She was grinding up and down Keith's old work colleagues. Mr. Hampton did not look impressed, nor did Mr. Twong. In fact, before she regurgitated half of the buffet into the vase that was on the table she'd been dancing on, she twerked on Mr. Twong twice, then twisting and twirling him. Oh, no wonder she was sick. He looked rather scared, and I was quite embarrassed. Sylvia kindly agreed to take her home on the Vespa. Also not a bad thing, as it was a fancy restaurant and she had the most horrendous case of helmet hair. She was almost as embarrassed as I was when I pointed it out to her. All in all, a decent turnout. I did my bit and the matter complete. A chapter over. Or so I thought. The glimmer and hope I had for after the funeral was the following day, the reading of the will. I was already aware that Keith intended to leave 10% of his personal wealth to the Friends of the One-Eyed Turtles Foundation. The remainder to me. Which was indeed the case. What I didn't know is what the remainder actually included. Now let me say, Keith dealt with all of the finances. I have never been involved in this. To my knowledge, were very wealthy. It turns out that, yes, we own the house outright, but when it comes to cash flow, there is very little. Most, in fact, has now gone to the One-Eyed Walk-In Salad Bowl Society. I had no idea that we had debts. Credit cards, a loan for the hot tub and summer house that we had installed last year, and then there was the car. It was on finance. Once the car was insured, the insurance doesn't cover the entire amount of the loan, so there was excess to pay to clear it. I just don't understand it. He was always so good with finances, meticulous with each pound and penny. How could he do this to me? And to think his last moments on earth was making frivolous purchases. I've cancelled the bespoke headstone that I had planned to have erected in his memory. I simply cannot afford it. Instead, I have purchased a more suitable and affordable flower holder from the post office that has a generic memorial slogan on it. It's plastic, tacky. It was only $11.99, but it'll have to do. I just wish I hadn't filled his coffin so hastily. I could have perhaps sold some of that stuff on. Look, I'm not on the breadline, and no one need know, especially Sharon, who, might I add, has not been in touch since Keith's death. I just need to be mindful of what I spend. At least I know I have a roof over my head. Something, I guess. I'm resourceful. I'm sure I can make this work.